Hi, I'm Bill Baker with the Independence Missouri Woodturners Club. We're going to talk about turning pins today, specifically acrylic pins. I've made a lot of pins over the years. For the last couple of years, it's been primarily the acrylics. They seem to sell better at the craft shows that I do. There's just something about them that the colors, the patterns attract people more than the wood seems to. Myself, I prefer the wood ones, but everybody's different. I do carry several different acrylics from time to time. We're just going to kind of go over the starter. I've got a sample of different acrylics. There's just literally hundreds, if not more, of color combinations, patterns, styles, sizes, solid colors, ones that look like mosaics. This one has shredded up US money inside of it. Ones that are blanks glued together with aluminum between them. See-through, not see-through. Ones with glitter. Can even do, these are Corian countertops. Turns wonderful. It's just a matter of picking what you like. You can find any color combination you want from anything. Now there are different types of acrylics that you need to watch for. Inlace is more for advanced turners. It's very temperamental. Your tools have to be extremely sharp and you have to go very slow with them. These are very unforgiving blanks, but they're also about the most gorgeous when they're done. You have blanks with things inside of them. This is Arctic fern leaves embedded in it. Hearts. I have no clue how they get those in there. They're ones that look like they're full of confetti. But one thing you want to look for too is, can you see through the blank or not? If you can see through that blank, or if it's got a lot of pearl white in it, by the time you drill it and insert your brass tube from your kit, which we'll cover in a minute, you're going to see that through it. So you may have to paint your blanks beforehand, just so that it minimizes it, or you can paint it a different color and it'll accentuate it. It's all personal taste, whatever you like. But you can get them square. You can get them with the corners knocked off. You can get them perfectly rounded. Ones with that look like there we go here. They look like the car finish with the look like an automotive paint with all the metallic flakes inside of it. Ones that are extremely solid and heavy. Ones that are completely see-through. It's just anything you want to try. Neon. You can also get glow in the dark. Get ones with different scents in them. It's just pretty much limitless. From your blank, you'll pick a pin kit. What I brought today is the cigar pin kit. I make a lot of them. They're a bigger, heavier pin, which with my big hands I like. I like to know I got something in my hand. A skinny little pin just doesn't work for me. But you want to make sure that whatever the length, your blank is long enough. And 99% of them are going to be, you're going to have a little bit left over, which we'll cover in a minute. You'll open up your, when you decide on a pin kit, it's going to come in a bag like this, just various parts. You'll have your brass tubes. Just to dump this out. You have your tubes that go inside. You'll have the nib, which is the end of it. Your refill. You'll have a center band and a transmission. The transmission is what makes your pin blank come in and out so you can use it. The center band that'll go between your two pieces, and then the top with the clip on. And when you do this, each pin kit comes with its own specific set of bushings. So make sure when you're picking up a pin kit for the first time, you check and you get the bushings with it, and you also check and see what size drill bit it takes, so you can make sure you've got the drill bit and you don't have to make another trip somewhere. 7mm, 8mm, 10mm, and 3/8 are probably the four most common, but they can be anything you want. The cigar pin takes 10mm, so I've got one of those with me. When I'm doing these, what I'll do is I'll pick the blank and the kit I want. Kits come in different platings too: gold, black, chrome, gunmetal gray, antique bronze, copper. Just, it's almost as endless as the blank varieties. So pick one that goes with it. What you're going to do is kind of lay it out like this. Your tubes. Take a Sharpie. You don't want to cut it the exact length. You need to leave a little bit for waste, just 1/8 of an inch. I do about 1/8 of an inch on each end. I'll just mark it with a Sharpie and then mark the other end that's going to be your waste end. Mark it where to cut it, and then put an X on it so you know that you've got the same side there. That's just not twisted 90 degrees one end or the other. You can cut them with a bandsaw, scroll saw, table saw, just about anything where you can hand cut it with an old carpenter saw if you want to. I usually use a bandsaw, just a small benchtop model. Cut in pieces. From there you're going to take it, you're going to drill it out, you're going to glue in your tubes, and then what I do is I mark everything. I put those tubes after the glue's set up in a bag, in the bag with the kit, so that if it's a few days or whatever till I get back to it, I know what I intended to make. Be sure you keep all your pieces together until the last step when you're ready to assemble. You'll also want to scratch up your tubes before you glue them in so it's got something to bite into. We'll cover that when we do the turning. The types of kits are just about endless too. These are just some that I've done in the past. A very small sample of the different kits available. You can do the slim line with the skinnier blanks. You can do the big heavy ones, which is why you want to look too when you're choosing. It's another thing. When you're choosing the kit, if you want to make sure that the blank you like is going to be big enough for the kit, if you take something like the center band, take it out of the package and just put it right there in the middle of your blank. You can see that might work, but there's no room for error in that. So I would bypass that and go to a bigger blank. Where you can kind of see right there, you've got plenty of room to turn and shape it. You don't have to be as critical on everything. So make sure that your kit you want to make matches the blank that you want to use. If not, just better to take an extra few minutes and pick another kit or pick another blank at this point than to get halfway through and discover it doesn't work. That's frustrating. After we get them turned and polished, we'll do the assembly process. Just what you need a press for of some sort. As I said, when you cut your blank and get it ready to go, you're going to have 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch maybe, depending on the blank, there's going to be a piece just left over. Do not throw it away, please. I've got buckets all over my house and all over my shop of just these pieces, leftovers I've collected over the years. My father-in-law used to come visit before he passed away. He would spend time in my shop while I was at work, because he got bored watching the kids. My wife had a daycare. He got bored of that, so he'd go down to my workshop and he started taking those pieces of blanks and cutting them into angles with my bandsaw and sanding them flat and gluing them up. He mixed wood and acrylic and corian and everything together. And to pin blanks, we started turning them. These are the only 4 that were made. My wife watches these like a hawk. That's her father made the blanks, but we call them quilted blanks. It's just all the different pieces left over, and it's a good way to use up all these little things. And this is definitely a one-of-a-kind pin. You'll never find another one with that exact combination. So save your blanks. All those little pieces, whether you drilled through them or not, eventually you'll be able to put them together and use them. The acrylics, you don't have to put a finish on. Like the wood, you're going to lacquer it or polyurethane or CA glue or something. The acrylics, once they're done and polished, it's done. You assemble it, you don't have to put a finish on it. And even this stage, when they look dull and nasty, this is a corian. Now, I didn't make this one. This was made by a dear friend who's passed away. And he was a member of our club for a long time. This is a corian blank. So you go from the dull, chalky feel to something that's shiny and slick. You can get real fancy. This was a expensive blank. Not real sure why, but it turned very nice. Made this dragon pin. The pins you can do click pins, twist pins, anything you can see. This is one I was talking about earlier. I did not paint the tube. If you look, you can see the reflections coming through of that brass tube inside. If I'd have painted it white, the paint's still going to come off a little bit. You can use spray paint, craft paint, whatever you want, but as you slide it in, a bit of it may come off, and 9 times out of 10 it's going to be fine. This one I didn't paint at all, and it's kind of neat though. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This one I think I got lucky. This pin blank looks like it's wood, but it actually is an acrylic of some type. It turns into a fine powder, but it has some metallic flakes in it that you can see if you get it in the light just right. But it almost looks like a wood burl with car paint inside of it, with all the metallic flake. That comes from a company in St. Louis. It's just, what you can do is endless. You're going to eventually end up with all kinds of little homemade shop jigs and things. This is one I made. I saw on the internet years ago for, after I turn the pins, I put them here, each one so that the top and the bottom stay oriented to each other. I can make a bunch of them. I don't like to just make one pin, press it, make one, press it. I'll get a bunch of cigar pins made or whatever, put them on here, and then I'll just sit down with the press and assemble 8 or 10 or whatever at a time. Which is why I keep a bunch like this, just cut, drilled. These are all drilled, they've got the tubes glued in them, they've been pin milled, and they're ready to just turn and assemble. So we're going to go over to the lathe and start turning. We'll start with the drilling process, one I've already cut, measured and cut at home. We'll go over to the lathe, get the chuck on it with the pin jaws and the drill bit set up, and we'll start making a cigar pin. Okay, now we got the blank measured and cut, so we're ready to drill a hole. There's a couple ways you can do it. Use one of these center finders and do it on your drill press. Use this lot, or you can do it on the lathe. Today we're going to do it on the lathe, so I don't have my drill press here. When we cut them and we marked them in the middle, so we knew which ends go together, I always start drilling in the middle of the blank, so that if there is a little blowout at the bottom of it, you can cut that part off. That's one reason we cut them a little bit longer. So this is a little Nova chuck with the pin jaws on it. Let's put it in there. It doesn't need to be super tight. Now for the cigar pin kits, it's a 10mm drill bit. So we're going to put it in the tailstock. Shut key here. Tighten it down, and then we're going to bring it up. Doing it on the lathe is actually more accurate than doing it with some type of a handheld press on your vise on your drill press. Back it off just a little bit. Get the lathe to right around 1,000 RPMs. Always hold on to your Jacob's chuck so that it doesn't start twisting and fly out at you, and just move in slow. I go in a little ways, back it out to clear the chips, keep the heat down, because they will get hot and explode if you try to force it too quick. I've had more than a couple explode over the years, and one on my drill press with that centering vise, took the drill bit with it, it snapped in two, kicked back at me, bounced off me into the wall, and it was not good. We're going to drill, I drill all the way through. I know some people don't. You can leave a little bit extra on the end of the blank. Drill about what you need, and then cut the extra off. I just drill all the way through, and another reason you want to go slow on this is if you go too fast, you can punch out the bottom of the hole, and instead of a nice even hole, it'll be jagged, and you're going to have to cut it off anyway. So I'd rather trim them down a little bit more at the end. Sounds like we're all the way through now. So shut the lathe off. Back it out. And yep, we got a nice even hole with no tear out around the edges of it. So we got a good hole all the way through. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other end, drilling from the middle. Lock that in. Brought that back a little bit first. Lathe get up, and here we go. The acrylic chips don't tend to fly off like the wood ones do, so you've got to pay a little more attention, be a little more cautious when you're drilling to keep the flutes clear. Keep as much heat down as possible. Some of the acrylics drill a lot easier than others. This one's pretty easy, pretty forgiving, but any of them can jump up and get you if you're just not looking. You're just not paying attention for one little second. So I just go in and out. I spend probably more time drilling than, and we're through with that. So shut it off. And we got a good one again. Now what I normally do after this, find your kit. I'll take my brass tubes and I just pass them through, just drop them through to make sure that we got a good even hole all the way through, that there's no burrs down inside that would catch it, that maybe for whatever reason the drill bit didn't get. When that does happen, or if it's just a real tight fit, I have an old rat tail file that I'll just take and just kind of ream it through just to knock those burrs off and make sure that the tube goes through all the way. So at this point, we're ready to start gluing. Okay. Now on your brass tubes, you always want to sand them before you put the glue on. I just use some 180 or 220, whatever's laying around, wrap it around the tube, move it. You want to get that good scratch pattern. Up and down, twist it a couple times. That'll take off any residue that might be left from the manufacturing process. That's what you want. It also gives the grooves something for your glue to hang on to, so you get a better bite on there. Okay, I normally do glue my tubes with the medium CA glue. I've used epoxy a couple times, but for these the CA seems to work pretty good for me. Now when I'm getting ready to glue them in, I'll orient my blanks again so that I've got where we marked them to be the centers. And that's the end I'm going to put the tube in and get it closer to this end than to this. And make sure you got your tubes with the correct blank. I always use this pin insertion tool to put it on, and I use plenty of CA glue. I don't want to skimp on it. Try my best to keep it off the ends, but you're going to put it in there, twist it back and forth so you're spreading it, maybe try to pull it out and then back in a little bit and get it right to just below the lip where you cut, and stop it there. It's going to squeeze out on the edge, don't worry about that, just set it off to the side and do your next one same way. In my shop at home, I usually do this over the trash can so that if it drips, it goes right on top of all the old sandpaper and stuff that I've got in there anyway, and I don't have to worry about getting it on my workbench or my lathe bed. You want it just below the lip of that, and I have some excess on this end, but don't worry about it. We'll trim that off with the barrel trimmer. Alright, those are ready to go. Wipe off the tool, the end of the bottle. I usually tap it to make sure there's no CA glue left in the tip, and then we're done with that. I'm going to these off to the side and let them dry. I tend not to push the time on them. I'll glue up a bunch of them and then let them sit for overnight or a couple days and get back to them later on. But I've got another set here ready to go for the barrel trimmers. This set, we're all good to go. So what I'm going to do, I don't do it on the lathe, this step. I'll do it with my pen, with the centering vise. And if you're doing like a production setting and you're trying to do a bunch of pins at once, that drill bit will get very hot. So what I try to do, if I'm doing different pin kits in a day, I'll gather all the sizes, all of them together that I need with one size drill bit, drill those out, then I can glue in the tubes while that bit's cooling before I take it out and change. Otherwise it burns pretty good. Now on this, what we're going to do, you got to do each side with the barrel trimmer. Your barrel trimmer is just a shaft that's sized for the size of the pin kit, and there's 4 cutters on the end of it.
Turn it sideways. Yeah.
Those will even up, what it does is evens up the brass tube to the end of the acrylic or the wood, whatever blank you're using. So I'll put it in this. You don't want to do this step on a drill press because there can be, your tube can be at a slight angle, it may not be straight. If you don't get it back in the exact same position when you drilled it, it's going to cause problems. So this one is better to do with a hand drill, so that this part will get out the glue if there's any in there, which we're pretty good, but you can, and just light pressure, and just stop and check it. Now you see where it's starting to eat down into there, and you're getting close to the tube. Now you want to go to, you see just the top of that brass tube, and it's starting to have a polished look. If you go too far, you take the brass off, your pin may not go together properly or operate properly. We're getting close. You can see the brass in there. And right there where it's just polished, that's, you can kind of feel it with your fingernail. That's right where you want to stop. We're going to flip it over and do the same to the other end. Keep clearing that off so you can always see your workspace. Clear those shavings off. Getting close. Alright, I think we're good there. I'm doing this backwards from what I normally do. Sorry. You can see just the end of the brass is just shining there, and that's where you want to go to. We're going to do the same for the other blank. Right there. Now this should be, and normally when I'm doing it, it's clamped to my workbench so that you don't have to hold it with one hand and operate the drill with the other for safety. On the different pin kits on these tubes, the tolerance out of the manufacturing is pretty tight. I've been told that if you take as little as a half a millimeter off of too much off the brass tube, your pin may not go together and operate. Came from one of the guys at Penn State that I had some questions several years ago, and he said it depending on the kit and how it's made, there as little as a half millimeter off can basically ruin your pin kit. So we're going to set all these off to the side because we're ready to start turning. When it comes to mandrels, there's several choices. I think I've tried most of them. This is the one that most everybody starts with. You put your bushings on, put in your headstock, put some spacers on, and do your wheel up tight. At the end of this, there's a little dimple, and your live center has a point on it that goes in that. I had trouble with these because I over tighten them. If you over tighten them, this will bend a bit, and then you don't end up with a circle, you end up with more of an oval pin. My biggest problem was when I first started, I didn't know not to tighten it, and the place where I was buying everything got in a shipment of bad mandrels, and this end was solid. There was no dimple in it. So I just kept tightening it tighter and tighter with the tailstock, and it ended up bending, kind of put a bad taste. So I still have them, I don't use it too much. This one's an adjustable. You undo it and you can slide the rod back so you don't need the spacers in it. Uses the same, put the nut on the end of it. You just undo it with pliers, slide the rod back till you get the bushings and get the length you need. I've used that a few times. What I use for a long time is this one. And this is what they call the mandrel saver. Instead of the end, it's hollow, and you just slide it to wherever you need the length to be. Thing with this one, there can be a little play in it, so it may not be the most accurate. What I've been using for quite a while now, this they call the turning between centers mandrel. It's two pieces. Put the small end in the headstock. The other end has a revolver on it, goes in the tailstock. You just put the bushings right there, and then whatever length you need, you don't have to worry about spacers. And I've been using this for the last couple years now, and it's my favorite one. So that's what I'm going to use today. Okay. Now with this system, the main difference is you can only do one blank at a time, which is kind of intimidating at first, but it's really not that big of a deal. This is one I turned or drilled out earlier so that I could let the glue set up. You're going to take your bushings. Like we said, each pin kit you get is going to have its own set of bushings, custom made for it. And just because, and I found this out, if you buy kits from different companies, different manufacturers, these can vary just ever so slightly. So if you get a discount on kits from one particular vendor, buy the bushings from them for that kit and label it. So that I've got, in my boxes at home, I've got, for this cigar pin, I've got probably 3 or 4 different types and sets of bushings from all the different manufacturers I bought the kits from before I figured this out. That's where your magnetic dish comes in handy too. Always read your instructions, because some of these, like this particular kit, on your between the two different ends, one end is 46 thousandths of an inch and the other is 47.5 thousandths of an inch. there's not much difference. So what I do is I have a little set of calipers. I'll measure them and then I'll just take a Sharpie and write N for the nib and T for the top of the pin. That's just so I know which end goes to what. And these will come off after you sand because of the water. So just remark them before you take them off. The middle bushing is a little easier. But what we're going to do is start with the nib, which is your long barrel. So we're going to take, see there's still not much difference between them. We're going to take this one. Now this bushing is your center, and that's another reason for marking this. It fits right in there. Your nib goes in the bottom. Then tighten it up, and you don't have to go real tight. Lock the spindle. Okay.